Alright, so today we're going to look at 4-5 really quickly. And in 4-5, what we're doing is we're looking at another way to do rotations. So we already saw one way to do rotations. So here's going to be another way using that idea of, last time in 4-4 we looked at reflecting over parallel lines. In 4-5, if we look at reflecting over intersecting lines, we can get a rotation. And I'm going to choose a nice easy pair of intersecting lines here where our angle is pretty close to 90. It looks like it's probably more 85 degrees. But what we're going to do is we're going to take our object, and it's probably easier to start with a triangle. So I have triangle ABC, and I'm going to treat this as if it were an XY coordinate plane. And just to make this a little bit easier to rotate, I'm going to assign point values to these. So let's say that C is at 0, 3. We'll put A at -3, 3. And we'll put B at -2, 6. So if I reflect first over the x-axis, when I reflect over the x-axis, I can do that simply by changing all the y-coordinates. And I just have to change the sign on those. So the way you reflect over the x-axis is you go from y to -y. So I'm going to get some new points here. I'm going to get 0, -3 will be my C prime value. I'm going to get -3, -3 will be my A prime value. And I'll get -2, -6 to be my B prime value. So we've done one reflection. Now next let's reflect over the y-axis. And to reflect over the y-axis, what we're going to do is we're going to take all the x values and we're going to change them from positive to negative or negative to positive. So we're going to have to let x go to the opposite of x, which is going to take all these points and it's going to send 0, -3. Well, the opposite of 0 is still 0. So it's going to send it right there to the same point. So that will also be C double prime, which is 0, -3. And then A double prime will go to +3, -3. And B double prime will go to +2, -6. So once again I have a triangle here. Notice that the original triangle, as we go around it clockwise, we go A, B, C. The first image, as we go clockwise, we go A prime, C prime, B prime, so the orientation is changed. And then in the third triangle, as we go clockwise, it's A prime, B prime, sorry, A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. So again, the orientation is back to where it started. And what's even more interesting about this is that if we look at how to do this as a rotation, it looks like from point C to point C, we could have rotated a full 180 degrees to get to there. And if we do the same thing with point A to point A double prime, you would see that we have a line that goes through the origin, or the intersection of these two lines that we reflected over, and it happens to also be a 180 degree rotation for point A. So we've rotated 180 degrees, and the reason it turned out to be 180 degrees is because this was a 90 degree angle. So when we reflect over intersecting lines, we get a rotation. And what happens with the rotation is that the angle of the rotation is twice the size of the non-obtuse angle between the two lines we reflected over. So reflecting over intersecting lines results in a rotation whose magnitude, which in mathematics is just a big fancy word for size or measure, is twice the measure of the non-obtuse angle between the two lines. And another interesting thing to point out from the rotation is that the intersection point of those two lines was the center of our rotation. So the intersection point of the two lines is the center of the rotation. And we would have actually got the same image or the same result if we would have taken reflected over the y-axis first and then over the x-axis. We still would have ended up right down here at A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. So it didn't matter which direction we reflected first in this case, we would have had the same thing. Had it been two different intersecting lines, then the order that we reflected over mattered. So we might want to be a little bit more careful about those reflections later, but right here, remember that when we do reflections, we start from the inside. So we actually reflected over the x-axis second and the y-axis first, and we reflected triangle ABC. So that was the reflection that we did, and that ended up being a rotation of 180 degrees about the origin. So that's it for 4-5 on another way to do rotation. We already saw one way to do it with the protractor and measuring the angle that we wanted to rotate. So this one just has to deal with intersecting lines and going back to our reflections and showing where the rotations can come from. And that's it for this section.